I'm especially excited about introducing our next speaker. I first learned about Fred Luskin when I went to a film debut called Just Let Go. Some of you may have heard of this film. It's the story of a Utah man, Chris Williams, who lost his wife and 2 children when hit by a drunk driver, a young drunk driver, a 17-year-old. And Fred was part of the panel of forgiveness experts after it aired. This man went on, many of you know this story because it's a local story. He went through a process of getting to a place of forgiveness of the young driver. And it's a really interesting story. But as part of the forgiveness panel, I first learned about Fred, and I thought, I want Fred at our next integrative health conference, because it's in that area that Glenn showed us before, the resilience of character, nobility, having sense of gratitude for life, living from a place of empathy. Forgiveness fits in that model. And also I thought personally, there's a proverb that I know you're familiar with, that's when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I happened to be watching Fred in the forgiveness film. I had just turned 61 on that day, living alone for the first time, having ended a 35-year marriage. So when the forgiveness subject showed up, it was mostly like someone planted something right square in my forehead. And I said, I've got to learn something about this. I've got to learn it because I want to feel better. Really, it was just about trying to feel better in my new situation and let go of the pain, the resentment, the blame, the need to make somebody wrong over something like that. So I've been working it. It isn't just a subject for me. I've been working this forgiveness thing. The things Fred has a bio that's in front of you. I'm not going to read off all of his things, all the credentials and the work that he's done. But I think I want to mention that he's one of these people that truly lives this purpose. He says there are 3 things that lead to a healthy, happy life: strong interpersonal relationships, creating a positive purpose in life, and appreciation and other positive emotions that you can bring out in others. The thing that I've noticed just in texting, emailing, talking with Fred, and getting ready for today, he exemplifies those 3 things as a working partner. So I appreciate that. And I don't think they'll have any doubt about where you work. You've got it right on the... We also have one of Fred's books, Forgive for Good, out on the table, if that interests you. We're selling those. And we'll get you wired up. And I bring you Fred Luskin. For this session, could you, grad students, could you help us out? If people have questions, write them down and we'll run them up to Fred. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Well, hi. So last night I was supposed to fly here. I mean, it's a long walk from the Bay Area. And the plane was 4 hours delayed. And so, like everything else, am I a forgiveness teacher or not? Right? I mean, it's, like, as Judy was saying, like the humor of all this, of those of us who stand up here, like it's the same questions for all of you. Like, what do we practice in our daily lives, not what do we say we believe in? Because you believe in what you practice. So as a forgiveness teacher, I would say I've met a handful of Christians, even though I've been to a lot of churches. Gandhi's famous line when asked, what do you think of Christians? He said, well, I'll let you know when I meet one. The hardest stuff about, health and resiliency, is that it's all personal. It's like all what do we choose to practice? What do we do with our day? How do we treat people? How do we treat ourselves? What's our goal in life? And what do we hold as important? And those big decisions will show up in the little decisions that you make every day. And you'll know your big decisions by how you act. So it's just an interesting thing when you think about integrative health and you think about a medical system that doesn't spend much time with people. Like, that message in and of itself is that we as human beings don't matter much. And it's very hard to get healthy in that situation. So the key thing is, I mean, for all of us, is how are we leading our lives? And how are we treating other people, and how are we treating ourselves? So one of the things that I've done work in, but not the only thing, is this quality of forgiveness. And it's almost impossible to live the kind of life that you want if you're angry with yourself or other people. Because not only does it leak all over the place, but it corrodes your health. But more than anything else, it corrodes your hope. And you need to have hope to live the kind of meaningful life that we all want. You know, I teach a class at Stanford, and by the way, I didn't realize how cold it was in Salt Lake City. I came here last night from the Bay Area, and it was 40 degrees warmer. So that's why I'm wearing my sweatshirt everywhere. This is my winter jacket. It's true. But I would like to start this with a meditation. And so what I'd like to ask you to do is turn off your phones, turn off your computers, and we're going to do just a few minutes of quieting down, because generally speaking, our phones and our computers make it hard for us to quiet down and listen, which probably has more of an effect on our health than our blood pressure does. The fact that we have a very hard time quieting down, and we have a very hard time really listening to other people, and other people have a really hard time listening to us because we're all so distracted. And the human being is built to have relationship. It's not built to surf the web, even though nothing wrong with surfing the web. It's not built for that. This magnificent neurobiology is for people. It's for connecting with people. It's for understanding people. It's for the incredible effort it takes to know yourself. That's the stuff past lizard that occupies most of your brain, is other human beings. Well, unfortunately, that's been co-opted by our hurry and our distractedness. And our relationships suffer, and our health suffers, and our sense of belonging suffers. So it's hard for me to have a conversation if there's not some capacity to relax and focus, because that's what we have as people to bring, is this, whatever this is. So I'm going to ask you all please to close your eyes. This won't go on long. If those of you who are not meditatively skillful, don't be anxious. This is very short. But I'd like you to please close your eyes and then do something that's challenging, which is to sit in a relaxed way. I mean that, like that's much of this instruction. Relax. Relax your body. Relax your breathing. Sit as if you belong in that chair. You belong in this body that you're okay. Like this is a very interesting and useful practice of just sitting as if the world made not a shred of a mistake when it created you. That you're okay. That you can relax your defenses for a moment. Because as you'll see, forgiveness is all about relaxing your defenses. Happiness is all about relaxing your defenses. I believe health has a lot to do with that too. Not so completely that you give up your immune system, but relaxing the guardedness. So what I'd like you to do is sit and breathe a little slowly and more deeply. And allow yourself to sit and be as if for 5 minutes you're okay the way you are. This is the hardest pursuit of health that we have. That I'm okay the way I am. And it's not like I couldn't be better, but I'm okay. And I'm lovable. And I love. And I'm valued. You want to relax into that. Because most of us, for good or for bad, think, I'll be okay when I lose 5 pounds. Or be okay when I get the day's work done. Or I'll be okay when I'm loved in a certain way. And I'll be okay when I make enough money or have the job I want or retire. But you just want to practice being okay. And that will do amazing things for your cardiovascular system. And amazing things for your hormonal systems and amazing things for the way your brain functions. To not be on guard against yourself. So we're going to stop this with one more momentary practice of just bring to your mind's eye an image of someone you love. Just bring to your mind's eye an image of someone you love, and just when you image them, just allow yourself to feel how much you love them. Just feel it. Feel how much sitting here you love this person. And just relax into your own goodness and safety. Just relax into it. And then let that go. Just take a breath and allow your eyes to open, but don't fidget when your eyes open. Just sit still for a moment. And just sit with yourself. You know, one of the reasons that forgiveness is so challenging for people is that most of us haven't practiced like sitting with ourselves. We haven't practiced finding the safety that's in us. And so we're constantly trying to look to manipulate the world to make it safe for us. And it's a failed enterprise. I mean, it works sometimes, but it doesn't work long term. And then we get mad at the world because it isn't safe for us. We get furious. You promised to love me, but you don't love me. You promised to treat me this way, but you're not treating me this way. You promised to be honest. You promised to be kind. Or how dare somebody do a hit-and-run drive thing, or even give me bad service in a restaurant. How dare you? Because I depend on the world to be a certain way for me to feel safe. So if I can't go into a restaurant and know that it's going to be exactly the way I want, or I can't go into a hospital and know that they're going to do everything perfectly, I'm anxious. And we walk around with a lot of anxiety, all of us. Because there's no such thing as real safety being a human being on planet Earth. You're too vulnerable. There is no such thing as complete safety in this body at all. There are things that will make you more safe, but there's nothing that will guarantee your safety. And so because of that, we all walk around with anxiety, and we all walk around with fear, and we all walk around with mistrust. If you add to that crappy parents, you know, terrible ex-spouses, all the other stuff that comes along in life, you recognize that it's hard to trust and be open. But the answer is in like learning to relax into ourselves and learning to look for the good that's in our life, not to over-focus on the bad. So if you get into some habit, instead of, like, again, the stupidest solution to life is intoxicants. Maybe not the stupid, but it's one of the stupidest. It blows out brain cells at the same time it distracts you from actually solving your problems. Meditation doesn't blow out brain cells, can have the same effect as a glass of wine, but you have to do it. And we tend not to like things that require us to do something. And there's nothing wrong with wine. I'm just saying it's not a great solution to how to be safe in our skin. And we're all literally going through our lives looking for things that'll make us feel safe. You know, is this person going to make me feel safe? Will this job make me feel safe? Will this house make me feel safe? Will this accomplishment, this achievement make me feel safe? And many things do for a short period of time. And then you're back to your anxiety because you need more and more and another dose and more people and different. And all this time, most of us are breathing in a way that isn't relaxed and doesn't allow our brain to fully oxygenate and doesn't allow us even to take in the good of our lives. If you can't sit still, If you can't literally sit still for 15 minutes without turning this thing on, you're going to have a hard time being actually happy. Because the brain patterns of happiness are not the same as the brain patterns of anxiety and the brain patterns of like itchiness and the brain patterns of needing constant stimulation. They're not the same. Now, you can have, the body is designed for highs and lows. You're designed to have lots of stimulation as long as you get breaks. Wow, look at that, it's snowing. Is that awesome? Oh my God. Look at that. Wow, okay. Can we just go outside and do this? Wow. I'm sorry. But forgiveness and generosity and compassion, they come from somebody who's safe, who's not constantly needing to attack the world to give it what they think they need all the time. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. You know the wonderful study done, I'm going to say 20 years ago? It's called the Good Samaritan study. It's a very well-known study where they took ministers in training and had them prepare a sermon on the Good Samaritan. Good thing for a minister in training to do, right? And what they did, though, was an experiment, and so they told the poor, baby ministers that, you're going to have to get this done quickly. So there was some tension in the whole setting it up. And then right before they thought they were going to be done, they got a quick knock on their door, but whoever the boss of them was said, "You got to come right now and deliver this sermon. You got to do it." So they led the people from there into what they thought was a, congregation. The experiment was designed to see how many ministers in training talking about the Good Samaritan would stop for somebody in pain on the walkway. And it was under 50%. You have to think of the huge humor of what that says about being a human being. Ministers, first of all, right? Okay. Writing about the Good Samaritan, about to give a talk on it. Less than 50% stopped to help somebody who was in their path on the way to the church. This is what stress does. This is what anxiety does. This is what being in a hurry does. It allows us to miss what's right in front of us. Your brain is wired so that every single ounce of threat will get in, some of which you'll make up. That's the other genius of human beings. No, it's true. That's one of the human being's great gifts, is even if there's nothing going on, we make stuff up. So you don't like the way your boyfriend looked at somebody, so you create a problem. You're gaining 6 ounces, so you think, you're going to hell in a handbasket. You find all sorts of problems all over the place. Because that's what our brain does best, is find out what's wrong with this world. It's supposed to keep us safe. Your brain, your whole nervous system is wired so that every conceivable threat from 10 years ago, from 5 years from now, something you read about once, the bubonic plague may come back. That's your brain, that's your nervous system's function, is to try to keep you safe. It does so by highlighting danger, creating stories around danger. The left hemisphere of your brain, its major point is to highlight problematic stories so you can keep yourself safe, and it fills in areas that you don't know about with danger, with problems. So, my boyfriend, I saw him working around there. I bet he was doing something, who knows. And then you have another little incomplete piece of information and you fill that in. But our left hemisphere is not designed to tell the truth. It's designed to keep us safe. which is why criminal cases are so difficult, being on a jury is so difficult. We're not wired for objective truth. We're wired for safety. However, since almost none of us live a threat-based life, we have the capacity to use other parts of our brain to create different kinds of happiness and goodness. Like, we have the capacity to make conscious choices, to see the good in people, to actively practice loving kindness, to practice generosity, to practice awe, and to practice kindness, knowing that they will activate parts of our brain that threaten stress, keep foreign to us. Completely foreign. And forgiveness simply sits in the part of our brain that stress and anger and threat keep away from us. It just simply sits there. Just like all the virtues and all the kindnesses sit in your nervous system waiting for you to access them. They're just there. And they're waiting. Now, my understanding of one of the reasons for religious teaching, and one of the reasons for religious education, and one of the reasons for religious and spiritual practice, is to activate those parts of the brain that lie dormant in our normal threat-based existence. And people who practice their faith, not just profess it, tend to show under stress deeper kindness and deeper goodness. They do. And in terms of forgiveness, they tend to do something called pre-forgiveness, which is when their religious instruction says you're supposed to forgive, they think about it. And they make the big decision, which is, I want to follow my teacher. I want to honor his message. So if something happens to me which is hurtful, I'm going to follow this person's dictum, which is forgive, or be kind, or give them a break. But that's a precondition, a pre-decision. The great majority of religious people don't bring that in enough to make that decision because they never actually made the big decision, which is, I have faith, or I want this to be a real part of my life. So I'm going to have to decide at a very high level that when stuff happens, I'm going to react from this point of view. Unfortunately, just having a claim of a religion doesn't necessarily make marriages work out better. But practicing on a daily basis the faith definitely makes marriages work out better. Because you have a reason. You know? It's part of my faith. It's part of my practice. Here's what's interesting. They used to think that there were all sorts of like quirky things that made marriages succeed. And now, like, again, from my point of view, they've stumbled upon which is what most of science in these fields is stumbling upon But relax into your seats here, because I'm going to let you know what the latest finding is on what makes a marriage succeed. It's kindness and generosity. Is that shocking? 40 years of study. However, kindness and generosity are really hard to do. They are really hard to do. Because your brain is looking for what the heck's wrong with your partner. It's true. And it finds it. Let me tell you. It finds it big time. Because again, some studies which say, so what do you like about your partner? Somebody will sit there and, well, they took out the trash last night. What don't you like about your partner? And they come out with War and Peace. Because that's what we do. We have brains that habituate to the good. We have brains that we're so fearful of not having what we already have that they've done studies that show if somebody has $100 and you give them 20, they have much less of a reaction than when you take away 10. Because we tight, fearful people, all of us. You have to practice overcoming that. You have to work at it. And in most of life, it's called kindness and generosity. But in intimate relationships, they've shown that, again, when couples are both that way, it brings back the best in each other. So, right, I mean, who wants to come home to Attila the Hun, right? I mean, let's just put it in colloquial terms. Who wants to come home to somebody who's complaining every day? Or who's too busy on their cell phone to notice me? Or who's just too busy on being themselves to notice me? It's very hard to underestimate the damage that this has done to our lives. The deep, crucial part of our lives. The part of our lives that really wants health, not good blood pressure. Those are totally different things. Health is not blood pressure that's, 115 over 75 and a perfect fasting blood glucose and, a thin belly. Like, health is the sense that you belong, that you have a purpose here and you're living it, and that you're a good soul. That's health. And health, it shows itself in kindness and generosity. So you could have a perfect blood pressure and, be a dipshit. You know what I mean? Speaking professionally, of course. But health is, at some level, like being okay with yourself and your life. And knowing that you have the capacity to handle your life. That's the resilience piece. For many years, I defined forgiveness simply as a form of resilience. And it's tried when people give up the things that don't work. But for many years, I defined forgiveness simply as an aspect of resilience. That, okay, we're wired to move on. And we're wired to move on with kindness. But you have to prime the pump. And you have to practice. And you have to make a decision that you'd like to be the kind of person who moves on with kindness. You have to decide that. Otherwise, it's too difficult. It's too difficult to deal with all the stress that you're creating and that life brings to you. It's a very interesting thing being a forgiveness teacher, as one of the things I do, because nobody wants me at some level. Like, who the hell wants to forgive? You know what I mean? Like, because your brother-in-law really deserves. You know what I mean? And you had a lousy parent, or that last ex. My God, if the world did end, the good point was that they'd end too. I used to think, I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it has the fewest number, Santa Clara County, I think has the fewest number of intact families in the United States, which is quite something to be proud of. Well, it's so mobile and so affluent, and unfortunately, so computer-oriented that you put too many people who are good at computers into a community and you lose emotional intelligence. You need people who focus on people and art. Stanford's humanities are atrophying. They won't cut anything because that's Stanford, but they have 1,200 people who major in computer science and 14 who major in English. Throughout this is harming us Not because there's anything wrong with this, but because of our over-reliance on it. And our use of this where we used to need people. Now, this gets us in two ways. One, it taps into the adrenaline-based threat system, because most of your threats come on this. Email. You know, it's funny. The average person at work, I think recently I read, checks their email 79 times a day. Every time you even think of checking email, you have an adrenaline burst of stress, because email has been shown to be a stress inducer. So 79 times a day, you're getting a jolt of adrenaline just by thinking of checking your email. That's even before you've read it. So there's something, though, addictive about the adrenaline system. Like, we like the charge because it makes us feel less flat and bored. And sometimes, since we can't sit still with ourselves, we'll take that charge. Instead, because we can't relax, we take the charge and then we get used to the charge. And then sitting still becomes really uncomfortable. But so it's attracted by this adrenaline system, and most of our bad news comes on the phone. It'll come through emails of work and necessities and bills and things that didn't get handled and this and that. It'll come in texts or phone messages. But we're afraid of this thing. Our brains are. Because when this thing gets turned off, like I asked you to do, your brain's happier. Because it's got one less danger to monitor. And your brain is always monitoring danger. That's what it does. So instead of the 4 different dangers to monitor, like, well, my stomach's feeling a little fat, am I gaining weight? Will my husband still like me? I'll look terrible in a bathing suit. That's one danger your brain is monitoring. But another danger is what's going to come? What am I missing on this? What am I going to have to do? The second way that this gets us, which is what makes it so difficult, is it also impacts the dopamine system, the thrill, the excitement, the newness thing, the addiction part of our brain, the chemicals. And dopamine's release is every time there's something new or any new stimulation or any thought of a new stimulation, you get a little jolt of dopamine, which is how addictions are maintained. Well, this is big for that. Oh, I can find out what's new. I can see, for me, how my Yankees are doing, or whatever it is. Whatever it is you want newness. Because of our basic programming, we're constantly searching out newness. And so this is great for that, except turning it off means the neurotransmitters that have been wired in there are very hard to let go of. They're very challenging. So we need to remember that when they do studies on happiness, the thing that separates happier from less happy people, as was mentioned, is one people. Affluence, interesting enough, disturbs that relationship, as affluent people tend to rely less on other people, and in order to defend their affluence, they have to make themselves better than other people. Because our minds have to come up with a reason why we have so much and other people have so little. Well, it has to be that they deserve it. And so in order to defend having much more than we need, this data is coming out of the University of UC Berkeley. They've done a study recently where they checked people, just observational research. They went to crosswalks in the Bay Area, just white lines, and they had somebody stand there and see who stopped at the Confederate walking back and forth across the street. And the money of the car cost was a direct relationship with how little they stopped. So the beat-up Volkswagen, that stopped every time. The brand new Lexus didn't stop very often. And it was a linear relationship. And they've shown this now in a number of studies, that the more affluent, the more likely you are to break rules and to think that you're entitled. So unfortunately, while that makes some sense, it actually makes it harder for us to do what it is that we as people are most here to do, besides, finding some succorance and nurturance inside, is to get along well with other human beings, to have good, strong relationships, and do things in this world that are of value. So what separates people in the midpoint of happiness from the 90th percentile is almost exclusively people. And if you have a whole host of grudges, it's very hard to trust enough to let people in. And we end up hurting ourselves, and we end up hurting the people around us. And the stories we tell about how terrible other people were or how badly we've been treated, they're painful for other people to hear. That they are signs of our own inadequate coping and almost nothing else. And they perpetuate the propensity for, I'm not going to say violence so much, but hostility. Because we're all telling each other all the time how people disappointed us, how they hurt us, how they weren't kind or good enough. Some study looked at what is the average American think about when they don't know what they're thinking about. It wasn't hopefully the study explained itself better than I just explained it. But they found that the average person spends 75 to 80% of their day complaining. Some of you are better than that. Some of you can do it 90%. The gifted. The key practice for forgiveness and happiness is not that you just have to work through your wounds. You have to peel the tape off your eyes and your ears and notice what an amazing world you were born into. And you have to appreciate it. And you have to say thank you. And you have to, how would I put this? Instead of just worrying about whether you're 5 pounds overweight, you want to look for the miracle of having a body that works. And you want to notice, I did not plan that. That snow was awesome. But you want to notice beauty. Gratitude comes in 3 primary forms. Gratitude for people, gratitude for beauty, and gratitude for experiences. Awe is even deeper than gratitude, and it has a whole host of positive physiologic effects. Awe at snow. Awe at the fact that maybe you come home and somebody loves you. Awe, seriously, awe at the fact that if you've been with somebody for 10 years, they can tolerate you. I'm serious. You try living with you. Because the funny thing about being in a relationship is you know how wacky your partner is, and they know exactly how wacky you are. It's like everything that you're thinking, my God, did they really just say that? God, did they come from a crazy home? They're thinking about you. But awe and gratitude open you up, relax you, allow you to stand without tension, allow your breathing to deepen because you don't have to be so guarded. You want to relax your belly and breathe slowly and deeply. And then forgiveness is natural when you're ready for it. Compassion is natural. Kindness is natural. They're just there. So I'm going to give you a very simple exercise to do, because I don't want to just talk. I'd like you to think of someone that you really love. Just don't pick you. Just think of someone you really love, and I'd like you to have a very short conversation with the person sitting next to you about what's so wonderful about them. And I want you to not use one negative word, one critical word, just thank you words. Now, this is about somebody you love. So this shouldn't be that tough, even though it's tough. If I asked you to do it for like 5 minutes, you'd be screaming for mercy. But do it for a minute. Just say nice things. Find somebody next to you. If I could have your attention again, please. I'm going to read a poem called The Settlement by Mary Oliver. And it's probably the clearest explanation of forgiveness that I have ever seen. Look, it's spring, and last year's loose dust has turned into this soft willingness. The windflowers have come up trembling. Slowly the brackens are uplifting their curvaceous and pale bodies. The thrushes have come home, none less than filled with mystery, sorrow, happiness, music, ambition. And I am walking out into all of this with nowhere to go and no task undertaken but to turn the pages of this beautiful world over and over in the world of my mind. Therefore, dark past, I'm about to do it. I'm about to forgive you for everything. That's actually what forgiveness is. Like at a moment, you just recognize, like, I simply have whatever life that I have and had. And it's up to me how much regret, how much dissatisfaction, how much anger, how much lament I want to carry into my next 10 minutes. That's it. That's the question. And that question makes you look at, well, if it's all about just this 10 minutes, what do I spend this 10 minutes thinking about? Like, what do I look for? Do I look for how the world has harmed me to conform to my pain and prejudice? Well, yes, most of us do that. And I have to say, for a while, that is absolutely necessary. Like, you have to grieve before you let things go. Like, you don't just go to this, because that's not what we're wired to do. We are wired to process through our suffering and come out the other side, because you do grow from it. And at a minimum, you get from your own suffering some interest in compassion in all the other people who are suffering, which is pretty much everybody at some level. You know, you just want to look at the limitations of anything in life. Like, look at Bill Clinton. Like, it's not personal about him, but like he has at times seemed lost, confused. He's not president. You know, you can just see there's a dissatisfaction. You see wealthy people. You don't see generosity often. So, like, the example that I use for when you know you're not as happy as you could be, this is in the Bay Area, which is traffic choked. You don't seem to have that same issue. It's like you're driving along on 101, and you're in a hurry to go to Whole Foods. This is like a Bay Area kind of thing. So you're tense, because, damn it, I have to go to Whole Foods. I have to go shopping, and I have so much to do, and now there's traffic. That's when you know you're not happy enough. If little nothings in life, such as the staggering abundance of going to Whole Foods, is not enough to make you happy, you're a lost cause. But that's the truth, because we don't look. We're kidnapped by our biology. So here's my Whole Food story. This is a truthful one too, I think. Well, you can't, even when you're a public speaker and you tell stories, you can't fully know whether they're true or not. I mean, because you know, if I told something 100 times, like, who knows? I could have made it up the first time, and I've said it so many times it sounds good. So here's what I remember. Well, that's true for all of us. I'm just admitting it, because if you've told something 100 times about your ex, whatever it is, who knows? But, okay, so I'm leaving. I'm finished teaching a class, and I have, I don't know, a little over an hour. I have another class, but the day class was like a regular class for students, and the night class was an adult ed class. So I left Stanford. I'm driving along on whatever the road is, the road leading out of the university, and it's, trust me, it is nothing like this. I mean, this is hard to believe how quiet it is. But they built Silicon Valley right where Stanford was. I mean, that's what happened. But okay, so I leave, and there's 2 Whole Foods to choose from. There's one in downtown Palo Alto, and then there's one like 3 miles away, but on the main street in a town called Los Altos. So I figured, okay, downtown, no chance. I'm going to go to Los Altos. So I'm making it up. I have an hour and 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go 3 miles and back. Okay, so I get there. It took me like 35, 40 minutes to go those 3 miles. That's fine. I go into Whole Foods, and I'm so tense. I mean, it's hard to believe. I don't know what it was that got to me so much. I mean, at worst, I'm going to be 10 minutes late to a forgiveness class, and they can practice, right? That's the worst. You understand? I mean, that's the worst that could happen, is I'm late. God bless, you know? But I'm so tense, and I'm looking, there's my organic this, you know? I'm just like tense with all this abundance, right? I mean, food from everywhere in the world flown in. I don't have to do anything but endure traffic to get to food that like the whole universe would have killed for just to have like one shot at, and I'm cranky as heck. Okay, so I'm standing there with my like items, and I'm not happy. You know, goddamn traffic and too many people, and my life is so difficult. And here's the other piece that I said to myself. Where it's now too crowded, like in cities where they build Whole Foods, they now have underground parking garages. So they have the level, and then you have to go down a couple levels. Well, so I'm tense because I couldn't get the spot on the street level, because then I could have left easily. So I'm in the garage, and I know the garage will be crowded, and then so I'm anticipating like Armageddon, because I'm standing in line with my organic cheese, you know what I mean? Okay. So I'm so tense that I find myself counting the number of items that the person ahead of me has in the express lane. And I'm getting even more tense. Do they have 10 or do they have 9? It says 10 or less. Is 10 good? This is what my mind is doing. So thankfully, like a moment of sanity comes, and I said, Fred, you're out of your effing mind. That's what I said. And I forced myself to calm down. That's the human condition. That's it. You're going to miss the beauty. You're going to miss the abundance. You're going to miss the love, because you're going to be stressed. This is normal. But if you bring grudges and anger and stories from your past about how you were badly treated, you are more likely to interpret current situations as threatening. You have to understand what you're doing to yourself. Nobody's doing it to you. If you have a language in your head of how this person harmed me, how this didn't work out, this wasn't fair, I never got love as a kid, my mother gave the biggest portions to my brother, whatever the heck it is, you are predisposing yourself to find more negativity right now. You're prejudicing your life. Your brain is trying to make you safe by reminding you that there's danger everywhere. But it doesn't work. And you have to decide whether you want that anxiety-filled life or not. which is why this poem is so impressive. Because what you do with forgiveness is it doesn't matter whether you forgive your mother. What matters is you forgive. Like that whole idea of, I just forgive whatever it was. It doesn't even matter what it was, so that I can see what's in my life now. That's what you do. You forgive the fact that maybe you screwed up. Well, not maybe, you did. Because everybody does. And if you want to know where you've screwed up, if you want some humility training, just look at your closest relationships and know you hurt every person who's close to you. Every one of them. By being too selfish, too preoccupied, too whatever. We all do it. That's why it requires forgiveness for us to get along with each other. But if you want some humility training, just reflect upon the ways that your self-absorption has hurt everybody around you. But theirs has done the same to you. So this is us. So you have a choice. It's a big decision. It's not like a moment-to-moment decision. It's like, what am I going to look for? Like when this talk is over, like when I go to the coffee, do I sit and say, it's not hot enough? You could do that. Or do you say, boy, it's nice that they put coffee out? It's that simple. But it comes from a big decision. The little decision, it's harder to futz with. But do you walk over to the coffee, or do you sit there and look at the almonds and think, God, why don't they have cashews? Which is what human beings do. All day long, you're looking for cashews. You are. But that's mild. What you want to guard against more than anything else is the stories that you carry around about how you weren't treated fairly, or how you're a terrible person for doing X, Y, or Z. Those are the ones that destroy your health. And they may not destroy your blood pressure, but they destroy your health. Because the thing is, to me, integrative health is, can you put somebody back together enough so that they're useful and valuable to the world, to themselves, to the people around them, not what their blood pressure is. Or, and it's much easier to be of value to the world if you feel good, but that's not the point. Because you can be 70 and, limping around and still be a wonderful, healthy, vibrant influence and not be perfect physically. And you could be perfect physically and be awful. So you want to think of health in some ways as the kind of bi-directional relationship that you have with life. Like, who are you during your day? What do people expect when they come to you? Patience or impatience? Nastiness, pleasantness? Who are you? What do you see as this take and give of everyday life? Well, again, forgiveness is one of those simple, not simple, but it's one of those qualities that allows us to be in that flow a little nicer. Because we're not battling our stories all day long of who didn't do what, or who did what, or who did too much, or who didn't do enough, all day long. Again, where I'm going to end this is, it's hard enough to be a human being. The first line of M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled, life is difficult. And we, and then he writes, and we spend most of our time trying to ignore that. It's difficult. But a healthy person accepts at least much of their level of difficulty, which we all have. That's one of the signs of health, that we accept our peace. We don't fall over ourselves because we had a terrible this, but it's part of us. And the thing that, again, the reason I still do this stuff after all these years is we have a chance. And I remember like being inspired by this. I mean, Nelson Mandela wrote something about like try to figure out what you can do to help the world become a more peaceful place. That's my, I mean, he wrote it much more elegantly than that. But I was in a peace studies part of a university. I was wandering through the halls, and they had all these wonderful peace slogans up there, and that one caught me, and I realized that I can do very little. I can talk. That's what I can do. I can talk. And I can remind people to like take the pain that they've suffered and not be quite so reactive to it. Just like lower the thermostat just a little bit and turn up the thermostat on noticing what's good. And you'll put your nervous system in a different kind of harmony. And you will improve your health. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the practice is a healthy one. You know, it's like equilibrium, it's balance. And without that, again, our default is to find everything wrong, and that's where it gets dicey. It's not like, we're not given with this brain a level playing field. It's a stacked deck. Like whoever created this made it hard on us. They did. But we can decide with some big decisions. So the last thing is that when they do research around the world of what makes people happy, the happier people, this is another duh, so please take it for the brilliance that it is. Believe it or not, happy people wake up in the morning and prioritize being happy. I know, it's brilliant. But they do. And unhappy people prioritize their lists and their to-dos and their grievances and all the ways the world hasn't been good to them and all the things that they have to do and blah, 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 blah. But happier people prioritize happiness. It's one of those big decisions. But the thing that I'm trying to say is the handful of big decisions show up in hundreds of little decisions. But you only have to make a couple of big decisions. And that I have seen that almost anybody can do. Anyway, my time is up. I thank you very much.
I think I'm going to use that stumbling into duh, the duh factor. Tonight we're bringing Fred back for an open to the public free workshop that, again, generous sponsors made it possible for us to do that. So if you like what you heard, come back, bring your family, bring your friends. We will be pretty much standing room only though tonight, so you might want to get here. We start at 6:30 to 8 with that workshop. We also have a couple of panelists that will be telling their grievance story and then their forgiveness story. And Fred will be our moderator.